Another storyline Beamer was asked about today. Clayton White talked about it last week. I wrote about it this week. The battle at corner. And I didn't really think about it like this, Chris, until Clayton White said it, but it's kind of been plug and play the last couple of years. You lost, obviously, Rush and Cam Smith this past season, but O.D. Fortune and Marcellus Dial, who was already a kind of starter, was sometimes nickel, sometimes corner, but he was already in a position where you kind of knew he and OD were going to be the guys. This year, OD is now kind of counted on as, hey, man, you're our most experienced corner. Opposite him, you have several guys who are in the mix to potentially start. And I'll tell you, Chris, I was of the belief during the portal window, I was like, they need to go get a corner. Like, I felt pretty strongly about that. And even said, somebody asked me on the message board, and I said, yeah, I kind of disagree that they didn't go try to get a corner. Didn't make it a huge priority. Well, I'm maybe second guessing myself a little bit because I think both what they've said publicly and internally, they actually feel really, really pretty good about the guys fighting for that spot, taking that next step, especially when you add in Jalewis Solomon into that equation as well.
Yeah, I do think it's going to be a little bit different. You can't say that you've got, like you had in 2022, you can't say you've got 3 NFL players almost assuredly out there rotating in. Because remember, that year you had Cam Smith, NFL guy, Darius Rush, NFL guy, Marcellus Dial will be a draft pick right after his season last year. Almost quietly had a really good year. So there are some question marks there, but Fortune's played a lot. He's the older head in that group and has done some good things here at Carolina. And then you look at the promise, it's unproven, but the promise of some of these other guys, Judge Collier, who isn't really as much of a household name because he was an in-state guy, but he wasn't a big-time recruit. He came into spring because of how much he played last season with the edge. But then you have Vakari Swain, who, Wes, you and I talked about this guy recently. He does some things athletically that are a little different. He can do some things that even for an SEC football team, you go, ooh, that's different. You've got him. You got Emory Floyd, who's a bigger, faster kid, not doing track. So he's just out there fully focused on football right now. He's got interesting traits. And then Solomon, who's not on campus but will be this summer. Between all those guys, as long as people progress and develop as they can under Torian Gray, who has a good development record, you might end up being solid there. Question mark, yes. But do you have some personnel pieces where it's not a huge leap? I don't think it's a huge leap.
And I do think, man, in time, there's maybe actually more depth at corner potentially than there was last year, with just maybe not quite having the upper echelon guys like you're talking about, the NFL guys. Dial, very underrated part of what they did last year. And Clint says, he's a little bit concerned about OD. I thought OD took a big step forward last year, y'all. I really did. And I think he can maybe take another one this year. And, we'll see. I think there will be more pressure up front, which we know that's always hand in hand. It's always rush and cover, right? And so I think that will help those corners. Eventually, you really would love to feel like all those guys at corner are coming along to where you can put together a true 2 deep. You can have a rotation and give guys breathers if they want. Last year, it was a lot of just, man, these are the 2 guys. And then Judge was kind of, when healthy, was your third corner, and he was the rotation piece if either corner was out. And so there just wasn't really a ton of proven depth at that spot. You kind of hope you can add there. And Beamer actually stole my thunder. I was going to post this note to our members that another guy to keep an eye on there is that David Spalding is actually also working at corner, a guy who's played a ton in the past as well. has played nickel, has played safety, has played some corner, and is someone who is at least in the mix and can provide some depth too. So I think a fascinating position there as well. And best case scenario, though, y'all, in my opinion, best case scenario is we start to hear Vakari Swain has started to make his move. Because I just think from a pure upside standpoint, now again, Jalewis Solomon not on campus yet. We'll want to lay eyes on him, right? Like I'm not ready to say Jalewis will just step on day one and have the highest upside of any of them either. I want to put eyes on him. However, Vakari may have the biggest upside of that entire group of guys at corner, just from a pure, raw, natural athleticism standpoint. But also, I think he probably had the furthest to come along when he arrived on campus. So, I think OD was kind of raw as well when he got on campus. He's developed, but I think Vakari not really being a.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, and it kind of goes to along with Clint's questions there. Question: would you play Vakari at wide receiver or DB? And I think because of what you said there, Wes, my answer right now would actually still be DB. As intrigued as I am, and realizing what I just said, hey, Vakari Swain can do some things athletically that are different. I think from an upside standpoint for him personally, like as a player, his upside is probably even greater as a DB. And it sounds weird. I just think he might, as a team, the upside might be greater there too. Now, I know he's got some length, he's got some size where, look, if they put him at receiver tomorrow, I'd be sitting there going, okay, this guy can probably help them pretty soon. But I just like the idea of him at DB because I feel like if he starts reaching his potential soon, he's got starter potential as soon as this year. And I feel like the upside is just so considerable there that I've started kind of leaning in that direction more. But I don't think you could really go wrong per se. The other thing, Wes, Vakari Swain, I mentioned this on the Insiders Forum, I think this morning. I think he could get a look as a return man too, which is something he also excelled at in addition to everything else in high school.
Yeah, he can do so many things. I just think it's, and he's a guy we even most of last year, Chris, I'm sitting there, you're probably similar. You're going, all right, are we going to see Vakari? He redshirted. I think he got in there very early in the season, but then didn't even come close to hitting that redshirt barrier. And I'm going, all right, where's Vakari? Like, this is a guy I kind of circled as being a potential early impact. And we even heard this offseason a couple of little rumbles just internally of, like, that might have been a guy we could have made more of an effort to try and find some role for. And, I think as a true freshman, even in today's college football world where it's play now, there is still a place for a guy to redshirt. Now, I think going into this year, Chris, like if we're looking at that cornerback spot, here's my answer to that question. If we're looking at that cornerback spot and we're getting into July, August, getting into the preseason, and it's obviously OD, and let's say it's Judge, and it's Emory Floyd, and then, well, hey, Jalewis Solomon is next, and Spalding's in there, and Vakari's kind of down that list. That's when I start going back to that conversation we were having about wide receiver, and I'm saying, at what point do you kind of pull that move and say, all right, Vakari, let's put you over there because you are dynamic with the ball? So I don't think it's a final answer. It's not a final answer really until I see, like if by the end of the spring, the staff is in behind closed doors going, like whispering, hey, Vakari's going to be a starter at corner this year. Yeah. Then to me, I'm done with that convo. Like, hey, he's a starter. There it is. If he's kind of falling down that list, I'm starting to say, hey, this guy's too athletic not to help us somewhere.
That's right. Yeah, you don't typically make a move if a guy's a starter or excelling somewhere. You don't rob Peter to pay Paul and go, hey, this guy is really, really. It would have been like taking what Shi Smith ended up being at Carolina West. You remember when I wanted to make him a corner?
Oh, you would have moved him, dude.
Out of high school. No, not in college though, because once he once he established himself and got to be a starter, you could still go, man, that guy could be a really good corner. But you're not going to take him in college and say, hey, go play corner. I know you're starting at receiver, but you should go over there because you got even more upside. I actually tend to think Bakari Swain has more upside to start with at DB. And since he's already there and since he's already, making some moves and doing some positive things, maybe trending in the right direction, I think you keep him there. But here's the thing, Wes, Judge Collier, he's still there, right? He's still, if you had to kind of pick your first team guys, you probably put Judge opposite OD. And then you've got Emory Floyd in there, who, remember, we picked up some talk earlier this year that he was also trending in the right direction. So, again, that's the spot where you've got, I think, a good bit of competition going on this spring and probably after spring as well.